Welcome back to the second part of the Ouroboros SCP-001 article by Twisted Gears and whoever else wrote it. I'm not on the page right now, so this is part 2, The Broken God. Pretty sure that's what it's called. Yeah, part 2, The Broken God by DJ Catus. Decatius? I don't know if you say it as all one word or not. And then Twisted Gears. So yes, part 2 of the Ouroboros. Yeah, you've already heard it like 4 times. Come on. Alright. By order of the Overseer Council, the following file describes a Maxer class anomalous entity. This information is protected by Level 5 classification. Dissemination of Masker class information is strictly prohibited and poses an imminent threat to the SCP Foundation and its interest. Individuals accessing this file must provide Level 5 security credentials and be insulated against AZ-109 memetic hazards. Failure to do so will result in immediate Carrier Omega memetic termination upon accessing this file. Now, what Carrier Omega memetic termination means is that when you look at a picture that you aren't immune to, your bones actively turn the carbon in them into graphite, and you instantly crumble as all your bones turn super brittle and you die. That's actually true. That is actually what it sounds fake, but it's not. Hold on, I gotta come here for a second. Sorry about that, I had to tighten a light bulb. Okay. Life signs detected. Memetic incarceration ascertained. Welcome, Overseer. So again, we're probably Overseer 13 like we were last time. Item, SCP-001. Object class, Maxer. And here's a little footnote here, so we can go down. Look at the footnote. It says... Footnote. The Maxer classification was codified in 1981 by the Foundation's Containment Committee in conjunction with the Overseer Council, the Site Directors Council, and the Foundation's Ethics Committee. Until such a time that the Maxer classification was codified, SCP-001 was classified as neutralized, and the Maxer class was created to replace this improper classification. See Classification Committee Record CA 931, relevancy of the neutralized classification and non-standard applications. I'm not reading the rest of that. It doesn't explain anything. And let's go. Okay. Special containment procedures. Information on the relevancy of SCP-001 to the related anomalous objects are to be omitted from the respective objects' documentation. While connections with the Church of the Broken God can remain available, the origins of the items to be omitted or obfuscated. The inactive component of SCP-001 is to remain in its current location, and any shipping or diving is forbidden in that area. Civilian discovery of SCP-001 is to be suppressed, and amnestics are to be utilized in order to maintain classification. Persons affiliated with the Church of the Broken God who make active attempts to seek out the inactive component of SCP-001 are to be taken into Foundation custody and questioned. Information pertaining to SCP-001, whether physical or digital, is to be confiscated and contained. The inactive component of SCP-001 is to remain inanimate. However, should SCP-001 experience spontaneous reanimation, all active MTF units at nearby Site 27, 44, 90, and 101 are to be assigned to activate countermeasures. Should this event, currently designated an 001 Omnipotence event, occur in the modern world, it is believed that current means of information suppression would be insufficient. It is likely that an SCP-001 Optimistic event would result in an SK-class Broken Masquerade scenario. There's another footnote here. Let's go down all the way to the bottom. SK class scenarios will automatically trigger a backup of all sensitive Foundation information to maximum security data servers within a self-contained deep well site, currently 117, 118, and 119. All non-essential personnel will receive mandatory amnestic treatment, and all major regional sites will go into a state of extended lockdown. Within current models, the state is indefinite. So I think Broken Masquerade means the Foundation secrets all get out, and they just boot the whole thing. And would likely follow an XK class into the world scenario. Extant active components of SCP-001 are not to come within 20 kilometers of an active component of SCP-001 under any circumstances. Description: SCP-001 is a collection of anomalous items, formerly a single, massive mechanical entity assembled by members of the Church of the Broken God in late 1942 near La Paz, Mexico. Items include SCP-217, SCP-1139, and SCP-882, and several internal components of SCP-629. A full list is available here, and you can't click on it. Okay, wow, that's so cool. And there's another footnote. 3. This was discovered after the component of SCP-629 via collaboration with Church of the Broken God contacts. It is unknown how these components were initially collected by Dr. Wondertainment without knowledge of the Foundation or its liaisons within the Church of the Broken God, and SCP-629 itself is unaware of its legitimate connection to the Church. Cool. Members of the Church combined the various anomalous objects in an effort to restore their deity. Upon activation, SCP-001 reportedly began to integrate metallic objects into itself while actively seeking other anomalous objects. SCP-001 and the resulting 001 antithesis event that took place as a result of its assembly was the cause of a significant environmental changes in western Mexico and required one of the most widespread use of amnestic. Sorry, my mom gave me a 4-pack of Levi's boxers. And required one of the most widespread uses of amnestics to date. Post-event, the active components of SCP-001 were taken to the Foundation sites for containment, while the inactive component of SCP-001 remained at the bottom of the Gulf of California at approximately these coordinates. I'm not reading all those numbers. So far, we've got the Church of the Broken God bringing together a bunch of pieces of a broken god, a broken mechanical god in Mexico, and screwing a lot of stuff up. Transcription of statement by Father George Castillo, August 1945. Ferdinand was the first who contacted me after they found the heart. The way they described it, the fervor that was in their eyes, it captivated me, and I knew that they had done it. I went to meet with Anthony and Salvador the weekend after my sister's confirmation. When they showed it to me, I was taken aback. It was little more than a pile of gears, pistons, ticking pieces of clockwork, and lubricated metal parts, all dutifully churning along without a power source. Within it I saw the heart, just as they described. It spoke to me. Not like you and I would speak to each other, but with images and feeling and pain. I was in so much pain. Like the spark that had given it life just made me realize what it was and what it wasn't, and it only desired to be whole again. Desire is a strong word, perhaps. Not desire, more like it was an impulse. Something within the creature drove it forward towards some unthinking, unfaltering end. The creature they presented to me was not like the other artifacts I had found and blessed. This one was different. There was something wrong with it, and I did not know until later what they had done. I begged Salvador to take it back to that beach and undo it, that it wasn't right, but they couldn't hear anything of it. It started moving before I left, shaking enough from side to side that it could achieve some locomotion. It hobbled over to a wrench, and the wrench became part of its body. They said to me, "Our God is unbroken." I never saw them again. Excerpt from an interview with Francis Bulganer, whatever, in 1946. It didn't use words or any kind of language. It would make metallic sounds, but at that same time, images and concepts would come to mind when we were around it. Have you ever felt when you have a thought or idea, and it's all there, born whole in your mind? You still had to think the words for it, despite knowing the sentiment before you finished the sentence? It was like that, but from an alien mind. Truly, the words of the divine. Excerpt from an interview in 2007 with Trixie Sylvia, agent from the Unusual Incidents Unit. I'm not doing a girl voice. There were a few wolves. Wait, you know what those are, right? They're like hunters. They work for the Horizon Initiative. They confronted us near a church in Santa Margarita, wanted us to turn in the stuff that we had collected from the Church of the Broken God, like the Abrahamic stuff we handed over. We deliberated on whether we should give it to them. Our stances with the IH have always been a bit shaky, more so in recent memory. While we have been on good terms with the local broken churchgoers, the wolves are more aggressive. We looked over what we had, and while we did, this woman walked up. I didn't know where she came from. She dressed like a hippie, thin iron chains for hair, and she seemed distant the whole time. The look in her eyes, her abnormal smile, like she was hardly there. She looked at what we had, and she only had to say this. I actually don't know what it is. A metal box. It whirled and clicked, and put out this little beam of light at one end when I picked it up. Felt lighter than I thought it would. I asked why that was important to her, and she said it would be easier for me to show me. You know what that means. She closed her eyes and bowed her head. She didn't move or speak after that, so I closed my eyes as well. She brought her forehead to mine, but kinda offset. We stood like that for a second. Movimiento estrojo, before she suddenly moved her chin down, made me jerk down slightly. The world dropped beneath me and I fell. Something clicked in my mind, an image of two gears, formerly meshed together, now broken away. I felt the teeth of my spine arch out as I bent over one step and I clicked along on the multi-dimensional cog that was the planet. It spun around the furnace of the sun, tethered to it by a chain that was gravity, and we hurtled together through an oily cosmos with all the power of an infinitely unspinning spring. Sorry. It was an experience. No, it wasn't a religious experience, but yeah. She told me to pick up the box back up, and it felt a lot heavier before. I couldn't tell if it had more weight or if it just felt more significant. I gave it to her and wouldn't hear anything otherwise from the hunters or my teammates or my superior. Addendum 001-2. Interview with excommunicated Church of Broken God priest Father Dolores Randall, June 1945. Extraneous dialogue removed. Williams. Alright, you mentioned the heart before. Well, were you there when they found it? Randall. No, not at all. I was out of the country at the time, working on a new mission in Panama. I only heard about Ezekiel after the fact. Williams. Who is Ezekiel? Randall. One of Burmo's agents. Burmo is the head of the Church of the Broken God, by the way. Mandel doesn't said that, I said that. Randall now again. Before he was made leader of the church. Oh, he just said that. Never mind, I'm sorry. Robert would keep a number of them around, these individuals who were in tune with God and could feel its presence, speak to it. Ezekiel had discovered an artifact of some value, and Burmo took him in afterwards. These agents were the first to experiment with augmentations as well. As you can imagine, many of them died. Williams. But not Ezekiel? Randall. No. He was very close to Burmo, and I don't know if he would have risked Ezekiel's well-being. It doesn't matter. Ezekiel didn't need augmentations to speak to God. He was just capable. Williams. So, what does Ezekiel have to do with the heart? Randall. You heard Avery tell you that they had a stockpile of artifacts, right? Anything that one of these agents touched, if they felt something, they would have shipped it to La Paz with the rest of it. Most of it was worthless, but every now and again, they would find something legitimate. The purer, whatever you call it. One of the agents discovered that near Nepal, they had tendons and ligaments and everything else, but they were all just parts. They would move on their own, but they didn't do anything together. Williams. How do you mean? Randall. These texts refer to God reassembling itself once the pieces are brought together before the heart. All you need is to feed the heart a limb, and the God will have a limb. But they couldn't find the heart. There were a couple of agents who have claimed to have found one, but they were all the same useless piece of machinery as the rest. Williams. Where does Ezekiel figure into this? Randall. Ezekiel was the one who told Burmo that if they couldn't find the heart, maybe they could build one of their own. This at the time flew directly in the face of the church's doctrine. The leadership, if they had known, would have excommunicated him. But it was quickly becoming clear that the project wouldn't last through the summer. I was sent in with my mission to resupply them after Ezekiel had left, and their supplies were nearly exhausted. Williams. Our records indicate that the heart was something they discovered. Is that not true? Randall. Of course it isn't true. You can't preach to the congregation about God giving parts to himself, to you, and then turn around and tell them that the most essential part is something you conjured up out of nothing. Worse than nothing, though. The details of what they did to create the heart and make it live were never revealed to me, but you can draw conclusions from evidence. There was a drought that year, and then the polio crisis hit an all-time high. Thousands died, all natural causes. A freak event, never accurately recorded because of the attention on the war. Dios mio. But who can say? Williams. You think the two are related? Randall. I think the timing is too coincidental. And knowing that about the thing became, I think the answer is clear. That was not the heart of God, Agent. That was something altogether different. Extenuous dialogue removed. Addendum 00103. Recovered video transcript, November 1942. I about choked. Video recovered from local documentary film crew. The shot begins on a broken house, the wreckage centered around the garage. Metal fragments and strips of rubber fall down the driveway and onto the asphalt and down the street. Pieces of various automobiles are strewn across the street and sidewalk. The trail leads to SCP-001, which is integrating a truck into its cases. SCP-001 continues to the nearest house, where it begins consuming the gutters. Residents of the area flee the scene, several injured by discarded shards of glass and twisted metal discharged from SCP-001. Lights produced from various parts of 001's body focus on a various prone figure. A section along the undercarriage of 001 alters and drops away from the main body, which continues down the street in search for more material. The ejected subsection continues alterations, forming a vertical pod somewhat resembling a human spine and ribcage. Pod continues in various areas, the rib-like protrusions extending outward as the rest of the body of the pod changes into a humanoid form roughly 3 meters tall. Light is produced from the head, which is focused on a nearby civilian. The metal humanoid picks up the civilian, who appears to be dead, and places it in a small chamber between the humanoid's ribs. The ribs vibrate as the humanoid approaches a second civilian, who is attempting to crawl away. She attempts to struggle as the humanoid lifts her up and places her inside the chest cavity. The humanoid turns away as from the camera to approach a third civilian, and what appears to be a woman's dismembered hand falls onto the ground. A growth on the humanoid's back slowly expands as it continues to gather bodies, the body of the humanoid decreasing in size as it does so. By the sixth consumed body, the growth is larger than the humanoid, and it is unable to continue bipedal movement. The limbs recede into the body, and the ribs extend to allow it to scuttle onto the roof of a nearby house. It remains in place for 20 minutes. The bulbous exterior cracks and is torn away from within, revealing 3 humanoids. They each appear to be symptomatic of SCP-217 and exhibit physical characteristics of the 6 captured civilians. One, a female with chains extending from its scalp, shakes another, which appears to be dead. The third, a man with clockwork limbs, examines itself before jumping from the roof, landing on its stomach. Doesn't appear to be damaged by this, which seems to cause it distress. It pursues SCP-001, which is consuming another vehicle farther down the road. The female humanoid notices the camera crew. It begins to wave, but quickly stops. It looks towards SCP-001 before jumping into the backyard and out of the camera's view. And this is an audio file. So I'm hoping that I can just read it. I hope there's a transcript of it instead of me having to insert it. Hold on. Okay, yeah, I can just read it. Okay, good, because I didn't want to have to record it and then insert it. Note, the following audio is taped from a phone conversation between an agent of the Church of the Broken God, which his name is unknown, and Robert Bumero. What was I calling him before? Burmo, I think? I'm just going to keep calling him that. Burmo, yeah. The call was recorded in December of 1942 and was collected by Foundation personnel during a raid on a church stronghold in 1966. God, we're already 21 minutes in. We're like halfway done though, so don't worry about it. Call begins. Burmo. Hello? Agent. Bless you, Father. Burmo. Dimitri? Agent. No. Burmo. Ah, of course. Bless you, child. How is the little lord? Agent. Stronger every day. We had to move him back for our office into the warehouse nearby. Burmo. He's being fed? Agent. As you required. Burmo. Good. When will you be moving to Pinasco? Agent. Within the week. We are only waiting for the next train. Burmo. It may be needed to be sooner. There was a raid in La Paz 2 weeks ago. 3 of our men have been not accounted for. There is growing Foundation activity nearby. Agent. Father? Burmo. Tomorrow. Agent. Father? Burmo. Yes. We are expecting them to head north, but they've come west instead. Minor setback. Agent. What about the safe house? There are nearly 100 artifacts there. And Burma. A minor setback. They don't know where it is. And even if they did, that isn't their priority right now. Their eyes and the eyes of the rest of the world are on Europe. As their gaze settles there, they will not realize our accomplishments have left them powerless to stop him. Agent. That was something else I needed to ask you, Father. Burmo. Yes? Agent. Our God is ravenous. We can't seem to satiate him. The supplies we are given are not. What is the issue? Agent. Father, the Lord is eating its own housing. We cannot convince him to stop. He cannot be reasoned with. It Burma. Nonsense. The heart of the devout may speak directly to our God. Can you not hear his words when he reaches out to you? Do you not feel the machine moving inside you? Or do you need more proof other than the living, breathing God before your own eyes? No, Father, that is not it. Burmo, I will hear nothing of it. For years we have prayed and asked our God to be unbroken before us, and now he has presented himself. We now know that the divine will speak to the heart of the devout. If you are telling me that there is none among you who are devout enough to commune with our Lord, tell me now so you can be replaced. Agent, our faith is strong, Father. Please forgive my insolence. I am only misguided. Burmo, see to yourself then. I worry for your faith. Have one of your brothers who is stronger than you. Have him speak to the Lord and tell him of the necessity for secrecy. Our Lord will understand, no doubt. The unbroken God is a reasonable God. Agent. Yes, bless you, Father. Burmo. Bless you, child. Call ends. Addendum 001.5. Escalation Report, December 1943. The following is an interview conducted with Foundation Commander Mark Peterson of Site-74, the director who prior to the 001 apathesis event was stationed in Mexico City, was on site with Foundation personnel in La Paz during the event. Also, there's a little map of Mexico before and after the La Paz event, and you know the Baja California strut. That's a part of Mexico. That big peninsula. Yeah, it didn't used to be a peninsula. Let's just say that. Let's just say there wasn't always a peninsula there, okay? Hold on. I need to shower, actually. I'll be back in like 2 seconds for you. Okay, I'm back. Where did we leave off? Okay, I think we're on the interview with Park Meter Peterson. Okay, Director Cornwell. Start again from the top. We're recording now. Commander Peterson. Alright, the first reports we got about the church activity in Mexico were in 41, but it was all pretty minor at the time. We had just finished field operations near the border up north, and we were preparing to move our assets to Atlanta for deployment in France. We had just gotten our orders to relieve a series of sensitive objects that they didn't want in the hands of the Krauts, and they were going to move our entire division to get it done. Leadership wasn't sure that Roosevelt would make the call to move in enough time for us to blend in with the Americans, so we were going to have to go in separately. The whole thing was a mess. Director Cornwell. What kept you at La Paz? Commander Peterson. I was there on accident. One of our trains had taken the overland route to La Paz, probably got picked up some armaments we had there. Turns out the train was supposed to head north, so all of a sudden most of the leadership south of the Rio Grande is in La Paz, which in retrospect probably did us a lot of good as far as the overall effort is concerned. I just realized I can pause the recording to drink water. I don't think I'm going to remember that. Director Cornwell, when did you first hear about the 001 entity? Jesus, is that what they're calling it now? The machine, I guess, we first heard through the grapevine and increased activities in the area. I guess it would have been a little over a year ago. We ended up in La Paz in October of 42, so yeah, that sounds right. The first concrete evidence we had something was wrong was when a train of refugees? Seems kind of silly to call them that, but I guess it's accurate. They show up in La Paz near the end of October talking about how their entire town had been mulched. They didn't really elaborate much, just saying, La Maquinina, Malacanina. You know, the machine. That's why we were calling it that, by the way. We had no idea what it was supposed to be. Director Cornwell. What was your first interaction with the entity? Commander Peterson. Well, the rail suddenly stopped running. If that's what you mean. We got word from the local authorities that there had been an accident up north and that the trains weren't heading to the border anymore. It wasn't a huge issue for us since we could have taken a couple of vehicles and headed east until we hit one of those little towns at the foot of the mountains. Most of them were hooked up to a separate line entirely. We could have just gotten out of that way. But the big stuff, the stuff that the train had been sent to La Paz for, couldn't just be moved. So we were going to wait it out. Then DeMarco had the bright idea to send a party up to the rail line to see what the holdup was and see what we could be done to clear it up. He led the expedition himself. Director Cornwell. What happened to Agent DeMarco? Commander Peterson. You know damn well what happened to him, Bill. Director Cornwell. For the record. Commander Peterson. Fine. We didn't hear back from them. After 3 days, we were going to send the rest of the leadership east anyway, so they didn't have to wait. And then after 5 days, one of DeMarco's guys showed up at camp. He was delirious, talking about the world leader, and how the rest of the guys had gotten mulched. And they had, hadn't they? I know it wasn't as big then as it ended up, but it wasn't something to fuck around with. DeMarco. Director Cornwell. Are you alright? Commander Peterson. Yeah. He tried to kill it. He probably knew that we wouldn't find out until later that we couldn't contain this thing. There wasn't a hole in the world big enough to put it in or a box that it couldn't eat its way out of. But it didn't matter for him or anyone he went with. The machine didn't care. Director Cornwell. When did you first see it? Commander Peterson. December. Once we had hunkered in, I was a part of an expeditor. I can read. I swear to God, I can read. Expeditionary. an expeditionary team that flew up there to get a good look at it. It was already, you saw what it did to that side of the country. I've never seen anything that big that could move. It was like a mountain of moving parts, blackened in the sky as it burned through whatever it was shoveling into its chest. And it was small then. It was, I don't know. We all had XK vent preparation training, but this went above and beyond anything we had trained for. It was inevitability. We knew that we were going to die, and this thing was going to kill us. It was just a matter of when. Addendum 001.06. Collection of Foundation correspondences. Note that the following are excerpts from written correspondences by Foundation personnel located at La Paz, recovered from the temporary site in the wake of 001 Antithesis event. Names have been omitted. Dear blank, I don't know if this will get to you. None of the trains are running, but our commander says that we can still get letters out. I hope it does. I'd like you to read it. The skies down here have been dark for weeks. Smoke from up north every day makes it hard to breathe. They still don't have indoor plumbing here, and nobody but the other guys at our company speak English. We still don't know what we're doing down here either. I keep hearing that we'll fix the rails, but why aren't we going up north? Aren't the brakes in the rails up north? A man came into town today with damn near half his face cooked off. He looked like a dead man, didn't respond to anyone. He got towards the middle of town and collapsed. When he finally woke up in the infirmary later, he was delirious, telling a story about a machine the size of a mountain that spoke to you. Said there were people jumping out of their homes and running just to throw themselves in it. Said they were shredded like jumping under a lawnmower. Then he died, and no one knows why. The mountains crumbled beneath our own eyes. We saw a figure rising through the smoke, slow and lumbering, but with terrifying momentum. It didn't crawl like a beast or walk like a man, but it was propelled forwards by a churning of million cogs like an iron centipede. Its body extended upwards into the smoke, higher than we could make out. Within its chest we saw fire, like the furnaces of hell. It came to the mountain north of us, and it did not stop or go around, but went through and devoured them. It reached out with a long, pulsing arm and pulled an entire village into its maw. I saw men leaping to their death as their homes were swept away into the same scenario as the rest. And it howled, not just through the grinding of the gears and the churning of the machine, but in our minds. I could hear it in my heart. It was screaming. Directive. Central Command Site 001, courtesy of blank. Temp site lost. La Paz in ruins. Mechanical entity contained. Massive geological alterations. XK avoided. Requesting amnestic support. Oh, that's a cool picture. Addendum 0017, interview with GOC Lieutenant Revenant. Note that the following is an excerpt from the post-event interview conducted with a GOC lieutenant codenamed Revenant. The interview of the following and all transcripts thereof were collected by Foundation agents during a negotiated information exchange in 1992. To date, the entity of Revenant is unknown. There's a story that gets told among Foundation agents, something like the grizzled veterans will tell the greenhorns during the long nights of guard duty or on some cell block or another. I don't know who started it, but I know they still tell it. It's been half a century and they get it still right. You can give them that much credit. They say, don't you know? The GOC killed God. But the greenhorns will say, that's not true. God is in a cell at site whatever. The GOC didn't kill God. But they're talking about that type green that got locked up somewhere, the one who thinks he's a Christian God. And the vets will smile and shake their heads and won't say anything, because they all know. They know that in 1943, in the midst of the apocalypse, the Foundation could do nothing but watch the end while the Allied Occult Initiative, a poorly funded, undermanned, inadequate predecessor of the Coalition, saved the world. The metaphorical gun was found on an island off the coast of Greece. I can't even remember what it looked like. All I get is sort of a fuzzy recollection the amnestics leave you with. But I distinctly recall it wasn't as heavy as you think. Why the amnestics? I was with the detachment deployed to the area, and apparently one of the pieces had some mind-altering effect to it. I have a vague sense of feeling something wrong, so I'll take their word for it. I don't remember what it looked like. I can't recall how much it destroyed that land. Hell, I barely even remember what happened, and the only reason I know where is all the before and after maps. But I can still feel it in my gut, that it wasn't how things were supposed to be. We stood before what looked like an angry and vengeful god, and all it did was beg us to kill it. We were all too happy to oblige. Addendum 00108, recovered video transcript. Note that the following is a transcript of recovered video footage, roughly 30 seconds in duration. The transcript of the clip was authored shortly after its recovery, though the video has since degraded and is no longer legible. The footage audio is in acceptable condition and is accessed below. Recovered audio. Warning, the following audio snippet is at high volume, and we will not be listening to the audio. We will be reading the transcript. 1 second. Recording opens on a town. Many buildings are collapsed or engulfed in flames. There is significant seismic activity present. 3 seconds. Video pans to show 001. Size is indiscernible in the video, but the entity takes up the entirety of the frame. It is slowly moving forward. 9. 001 is seen moving large amounts of earth into itself. Occasionally, flames erupt from within the entity. 15. Air raid sirens become audible as the sky lights up, as if by lightning. The clouds directly over 001 part momentarily. SCP-2399 is visible, its underside slightly damaged. Foundation mortar fire is seen passing overhead. 20 seconds. One such mortar strikes 001. No damage is visible. 22. The underside of SCP-2399 is glowing blue. 24. A bright beam of light erupts from SCP-2399 and strikes SCP-001. SCP-001 violently reacts and reaches towards SCP-2399. By the way, SCP-2399 is the red spot on Jupiter, by the way. It's not a joke. It is a red spot on Jupiter. And I guess it's an alien, it's a crashed alien site, yeah. I've heard this one before. SCP-2399 is a crashed alien gun that creates the red spot on Jupiter. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. 26 seconds. There is an explosion. Nothing can be seen on video. 30 seconds. As nearby people scream, video ends. Addendum 001.09. Neutralization of SCP-001. On July 17, 1943, agents from the Allied Occult Initiative contacted Foundation directors stationed at La Paz, Mexico, and requested assistance with transportation towards the site of the 001 Antithesis event. I'm still gonna say it like that. That is not how you say it, but I don't care, because I know that's a real word, and I don't think this is a real word. Foundation operatives moved quickly to dispatch a plane to retrieve the AOI members. After arriving, the agents describe a unique anomalous artifact they have in their custody, and how it could be used to slow the advance of the entity. 3 days after arriving at La Paz on July 24, 1943, the Allied Occult Initiative dispatched a single agent to the site of the entity with the anomalous artifact on their person. On the morning of the 25th, 1943, as 001 entity approached the shore of the Pacific Ocean, another massive mechanical construct appeared overhead. The origin of this entity is currently unknown. Records of the event following the appearance of SCP-2399 are incomplete and likely inaccurate. The result of this engagement was the annihilation of 001. 2399 disappeared and was later discovered in the low Jupiter orbit in a state of disrepair, though the reason for this is currently unknown. The remaining initiative component, 001, a massive, unassembled group of machine parts, collapsed at the bottom of the Gulf of California. Upon removing 882 from an inactive superstructure, the remainder collapsed and became wholly inert. Following the event, a massive amnestication of individuals in and around the area now known as Baja California took place. These efforts were aided by the quantity of thick black smoke that accompanied SCP-001, and the current historical records describe the event as a forest fire. Significant effort was made to adjust maps of the area, as well as to relocate displaced citizens. Because of the need for widespread amnestic regime, several experimentation neurotransformers were used, and because of the poorly understood side effects, it is estimated that no fewer than 2 million people across the world died in a decade following the event. Addendum 10. Collected Allied Occult Initiative documentation. Note, the following document was given to the Foundation personnel by long list of numbers. It is currently unknown how the document came into the long list of numbers possession. From the Office of the Authority General on the Allied Occult Initiative, Priority Tango 11, ATTN, or Attention, General Darius, Artifact Collection Report, Author, Lieutenant Van Pelt, to Colonel Bagagram, I don't know. Report length, 57 pages. Summary of report. On December 30th, 1942, a rogue humanoid entity, anomalous in nature, was sighted by patrol near a small island off the coast of Greece. This entity, who claimed no name and did not communicate readily in the English tongue, was carrying a small cubic artifact no larger than a baseball. The entity appeared to be feminine and had a number of steel chains extending from its scalp. What? You've heard this person like 3 times so far. Whatever. Oh! It's that lady that took that box from that one, whatever. Entity was originally willing to give up possession of artifact, classified as AR-213, but became hostile shortly thereafter and began speaking. Entity made threats on the lives of the squad and subdued 2 officers before being incapacitated by Sergeant Dixon. Entity made reference to the west of Mexico country, demanding to be freed so that the artifact could be taken there. Further research has uncovered increased SCP Foundation activity in that area, as well as some minor geological disturbances. On the orders of Colonel Bagram, 2nd Platoon was ordered to a ship to the site of the disturbances with the entity, classified EN-340, in tow. After boarding the ship bound to America, 340 became passive, albeit obviously uncomfortable and disturbed, recommending further psychological evaluation of 340 upon return prior to termination. Once analysis of AR-213 is complete, artifact will be shipped to Zernch for incineration. Report is attached for your consideration. Lieutenant R. Van Pelt, 2nd Platoon, Allied Occult Initiative, Peacekeepers. Addendum 11. Agent Ruberson's Statement, 1944. Note, Agent Aaron Ruberson was on site during the collection of SCP-001 artifacts. As the most senior members of Foundation staff assigned to the collection effort, he was required to submit a post-event statement. This report was filed at Site-17 until it was added to other classified material related to SCP-001. It is unknown whether any other individuals had knowledge of this report, or if any copies were made. It is the following excerpt that was made from that statement. Sorry, I had chicken earlier. Oh. I love water so much, you don't even understand. Okay. We took what we could from the shores first. Little things, gears, pulleys, pistons, things like that. A lot of it was garbage, but they were still twitching, spinning, turning. They still had life in them. The small stuff sort of died off a couple hours later, but I could hear the bigger pieces were still churning weeks later, like cutting the head off a chicken. The important parts, the ones we knew, the actual church artifacts, we managed to bag and get moved to a train in La Paz for transport. I counted Christ, maybe 100? Individual anomalous artifacts. Some of the boys at the train station joked that they'd have to build a whole new site just to keep it all. We kept casualties low, fortunately. Most guys just being dumb around machinery, acting like it still couldn't take their arms off. Rodriguez got his hand crunched, and we had to help move him to the local clinic. I think we only had 1 death the entire time. One of the locals we hired to help dive down into the bay and get scraps around the heart so we could pull it up. I didn't see it, but I heard about it. They said they found him with his head smashed between 2 moving pieces. Said looked like he'd been shoved in there by himself. But I don't know, I didn't see it. I see the tags, though. You know, where a place manufactures something, and in order to identify where the part came from, they'll get a big piece of metal with their name on it and stick it on the side of the part. We saw plenty of those on the other parts, stuff that it had collected while it was eaten on the way to a sea. None of the church artifacts, though. They all buzzed along like everything else, but they weren't marked. You could feel something when standing next to them, like serenity. The whole project was like that. It felt calm, like relief, except for the heart. When we finally got it out of the bay, we had to keep it on the shore for a day because of the weather. Some of the locals started to get itchy, said they were hearing voices, couldn't go near it. Didn't matter how much money we offered them. Had to wait to bring in more support from base north just to get it loaded on a ship. Man, I don't know. I've seen all kinds of things, but my memetic resistance is pretty high. I had to pass a handful of tests just to get this assignment, and everything was clean. But I can't deny getting another kind of feeling around the heart. I don't know if I'd say I was hearing voices, but write the tags. It was as if we were leaving and loading it on the ship that was going to take it north that I saw them the first time. I didn't even think to say anything then. Didn't think to pass my mind until it started looking into some other files. Then that ship crashed in a storm, they lost the heart, and the whole thing I kept thinking about was the goddamn metal tags. I realized it then, I think. There wasn't a church artifact, Johnny. They said property of the factory. And there's a footnote here. Due to difficulty of close examination of SCP-882, these claims have not been verified. Addendum 12. Interview with the person that gave the little special Global Occult Coalition document to the Foundation. The long string of numbers I mentioned earlier. I'm going to call him Bobby. Note that the following is an excerpt from an interview in 2009 with Bobby, who claims to be a part of the previously unknown sect of the Church of the Broken God. Contact was made with cooperation of the Unusual Incidents Unit, who had interacted with Bobby as detailed in Addendum 0101. Well, I don't remember that. Hold on. I gotta get my whole story straight, you know? Weird. So tell me what you think you know. I see. Interesting. Well, you're not entirely wrong, and that's commendable in this day and age. There are a few details I feel like you may be overlooking, and you may be overvaluing the information handed to you by a self-admitted amnestic. Let me set the record straight. The GOC did not kill Yahweh, and they may so proudly claim. And that was not the broken god they destroyed. It was a piece of it, sure, but would you show me the camshaft and call it a car? Oh, so you have some pieces together, an engine perhaps, but not a car. God is much simpler than that. God is everything, from the biggest star to the smallest particle. Each tiny parts, completely insignificant on their own, doing whatever it is they're meant to do, meshing together, gnashing at each other, all a part of the cosmic machine. The machine aspect was, at some point, likely simply a metaphor, an idea, but as I'm sure you know, ideas are powerful. They make things from nothing, or change things that already are. And with a small spark of the divine, a symbol becomes real. Have a planet with as much life as there is here, you generate a lot of ideas. And you may ask me, why is it called the Broken God? There are a few possible answers. Something as simple as transitional issues. Reinterpretations made physical by the devout. Is broken simply a poor translation of some more nuanced word? Was God a being that broke in the new Big Bang? If so, why did it break? And what will happen if it's repaired? I can answer none of these questions save the last, but you already know that answer. Whatever God once was doesn't matter, ultimately. What matters to you is what it remains as it is. Broken. God knows that. The more powerful parts, the mechanical components, the more conventional sects may labor as holy, they know they are not meant to be one solid thing. And even when forced together, a foreign force driving them, they know what they really are. Bits of a monster will work to destroy itself, deploying smaller entities to do the job. The GOC didn't kill it. They took the gun from its own hand and claimed credit when they pulled the trigger. The problem is that humans are too small a part of God to remember. Remember what it was like before? And those things like Burma will invent new ways to push us towards a singularity. Because that will happen. Did you see the underside of the destroyer? It was damaged even before the encounter in 43. And if you look very closely, you might see the scars. We're getting closer and closer to the power core. It even managed to damage whatever it let slip in between the layers of the reality this time. Eventually, the monster will win. It will destroy the destroyer, devour it, and with its power consume everything. And I mean everything. God will return to being one giant being, one singularity, and then break. Only this time, it may be from an outside force within it. The rust of the factory, the blood of the Vite King, the 50th Wondertainment, some random person on the street with enough spark in them to become a reality bender. They will have a hand in remaking the universe and close the secondary loop of all this. No, that doesn't concern me. It's an eventuality. It's meant to happen. Who's to say it already hasn't happened, and your people were the winner? Maybe humanity itself was the winner. But that doesn't mean I'm, against putting it off, allowing the primary loop to continue. Yes, it's possible. I know you couldn't damage the monster last time, and that the destroyer may not be able to repair itself by the time it is needed. But who's to say you can't aid it, or mimic those who were seek to rebuild God and acquire outside help? Working together, nothing is impossible. Apart, we are broken, but united, we are God. Okay, let me lay down the basic story of this SCP-001 article. So, way back in the day, the Church of the Broken God, a broken God is just a bunch of little pieces of machinery that, when put together, will become an elder being, whatever, doesn't matter. So the Church of the Broken God worships this guy, and they want to put him back together. They want to worship his broken parts, whatever. They want to remake him, right? So they can't find the heart to him. You know, the heart's what keeps him pumping. And so they make a fake heart out of anomalous entities, out of blood, and this fake heart eventually breaks out. It consumes a bunch of anomalous items, and it starts to go on a warpath down the side of Mexico, down the west side of Mexico, creating the Baja Californian peninsula. Eventually, one of the church members from the Broken God, some chick, gets a hold of a SCP anomalous artifact and goes to Greece, and the Global Occult Coalition finds her. They take the gun, they call down the destroyer from space. The destroyer destroys the Broken God, and the Broken God destroys the destroyer, so he has to fly to Jupiter, and everything's happy. That's basically it. A big monster destroys the side of Mexico, a big space being comes down and kills it, and then goes away. That's what I could gather from this part. I hope it's accurate enough for you guys. Anyway, I'll see you in the next part, which is Atonement. Yay!